That's the thing. If you care about your neighborhood, or if you care about your community, or if you care about ownership in general, like individual ownership, which is the most important thing in this country, I would say.
I agree.
Yeah. Dollar make that cash. Under all is the land, the real estate. Courtney and friends about to show you how to generate wealth. Get educated, do for yourself. Add a couple notches to your belt. Under all is the land. Under all is the land. The real under all is the land. Under all is the land. The real estate. Coming to you live from ACME Real Estate in Los Angeles, California.
Welcome to Under All is the Land. I am your host, Courtney Poulos, here with my rock star co-stars, Silke Fernald.
Hello.
And Dominique Madden.
Hi.
Today is Wildcard Wednesday, which means our podcast hosts are going to take a third of the podcast to discuss a topic that is on their mind and in their heart, on their head. You know what I mean. And we're going to start with Dominique. Dominique. Hey.
Hi.
Hi.
Okay, so today I actually wanted to talk about something that is heavily saturating the market in a very negative way, and that's corporations and iBuyers buying single-family properties, which really should be reserved for individual buyers, in my opinion. This is an issue that it's happening across the country, and what it's doing, what it is. Let's talk about that first.
Sure.
Is corporations who are buying single-family homes with the purposes of renting them out or flipping them. It can go either way. And, in both ways, what it does is it removes inventory from real buyers who are genuinely searching for, their own properties or even second homes. Even honestly, even if it's individuals who are searching for, rentals, it's a way for individuals to build wealth as opposed to corporations who are already wealthy. So, it just generally removes inventory from the market for buyers, but it also saturates the market with more buyers who...
It saturates the market with buyers who aren't actually buyers.
Yeah.
They're corporate buyers, invisible entities who have very little accountability. But, to me, it's like, first of all, in Central Florida, this is a big deal. Like, there are corporations buying up whole neighborhoods and taking all that inventory off the market for what would be probably first-time home buyers.
What are they doing with it?
They're turning them into rentals.
Oh, that's...
But part of the health of our market is, I think, turnover. It's when people buy and then in 5 to 7 years they sell and then they move up and whatever. And so, these corporations are basically taking inventory off that who knows when they're going to sell. And then if they do sell, are they going to release it all at the same time and create a supply overload, thereby diminishing all the values of the other people in the areas where they are buying? Because now there's going to be a surplus of inventory.
Right, because, prices are created from supply and demand issues. And if you have all these invisible buyers coming in and creating, creating extra demand where it otherwise wouldn't be, you're inflating prices. And sometimes these people are coming in and they're overpaying. So they're actually inflating the market in that way, such as Zillow, who came in and they did their iBuyer program and they overpaid for a lot of properties. And then they had to dump those properties for a deficit, which tells you that model doesn't work, as you mentioned before.
Yes.
But also, that it can be detrimental not only to the market, but, to the people who are competing on those properties. As if they have to compete with that iBuyer who's paying a price because they see this benefit to them that is obviously not real. Now that person's paying extra for that. If that buyer wasn't in the market, they might not be paying that price. I saw a stat that said that the four biggest like single family investor corporations own 200,000 properties. Wow. So that's 200,000 properties. And I mean, there are more beyond these four, big corporations, but 200,000 properties that are being removed from
real buyers.
Yeah.
That's
crazy. Yep. Well, Silke and I had an opportunity at a listing presentation just a couple weeks ago where we literally had the appointment set up. And on the day, the guy said, sorry, I got an offer from Open Door or something, and I'm just going to take that. I'm like, really? You don't even want to try in this wonderful, healthy market we have in Los Angeles to put the property on the market? Like, why? And so, you also have to look in this conversation at what offer is the corporation making to these sellers that makes them think that at any price, this is the way to go.
Totally. And to touch on that, it's important for people to consider why and then consider how they can compete against that. The things that these corporations are doing is they're offering cash offers, which they'll probably refinance after.
Okay, and then hold that thought for 1 second, because
Okay.
if you don't know, there are a ton of programs out there in the market right now for regular buyers to write offers as if they're cash so they can compete with these corporate buyers who are offering cash. HomeLight has one. Scott Griffin Financial has one. I mean, there are several out there. So, thankfully, there are options for buyers. So if you don't know, now you know. That's a good way to compete. Go.
Well, that.
Yeah.
They're offering the cash offers, which, yes, there are programs that can help you compete with that. And what a cash offer means to a seller and why that's attractive, aside from it just being cash, is because there's one less person in the transaction, right? There's no lender involved. So typically when you have a lender involved, what that adds to the transaction is extra contingencies. So with these cash offer programs, you too can waive these contingencies. And even though you do have that third party person involved, you still have the strength of a cash offer in that you have the lack of contingencies.
Right. No
that they
appraisal,
usually have.
no loan contingency.
No appraisal, no loan, shorter closes, and those are usually the ways that they edge themselves over standard
and
buyers.
no physical inspection contingency, which is scary for a lot of buyers if they think they have to go in with no physical in order to compete.
That comes down, honestly, at a situation, because I see a lot of people waiving that. In some markets, you have to.
Yeah.
I know
In
I
Palm
talked to
Springs,
my
you
niece
have to.
in Pennsylvania, and in Pennsylvania, you cannot write with a physical right now because no one will accept it unless they've been sitting and they haven't had any activity. But if you're competing, you have to waive the physical from the jump. Here, it's not always the case. I frequently get physical. In fact, I haven't had anyone have to waive it in years.
Well, it depends, right? If they provide pre-inspection reports, do they do that in Pennsylvania?
Sometimes.
Because
But-
Northern California, it's all as is, but they have reports.
Right.
So here it's sort of like a mixed bag. Some
Yeah.
say, okay, I'll give you reports, and then we hope to get a non-contingent offer.
Yeah.
Some people say, I know what I'm buying, I don't care, whatever, it's a house, I want it. And they go in without physical. But it's
Well,
still
let's talk
not-
about that for a second. There are risks with
There
that.
are risks with-
So the
of
important
course.
thing is, if you want to compete with a corporate buyer and you're doing one of these cash offer programs, so you're going in with no financing contingency and you're going in as is or whatever, I would recommend you at least reserve the right to do your inspection for due diligence purposes, even if you're willing to accept it as is. So for the right offer, I think that equals the same thing for a seller. I should hope it protects everyone in the transaction, but
Every case is different.
every
right?
case is different. Like Silke had a buyer who wrote with no contingencies, and then after she moved in, it was kind of like there were a lot of things that showed up as wrong. So that's the risk a buyer has to be cognizant of that they're taking before they go in that direction. But it's easier to see on some houses than others, right?
Yeah. And hey, if you can get away with it, I mean, even if you do a short physical that allows you entry and just a moment to walk away, should it be too much for you to take on, that too can be competitive. If someone sees a great price and a 3 or 5 day physical versus no contingencies but a lesser price, they might consider 3 to 5 days. I mean, it just depends on what the difference
you can't
is.
stop corporations from buying real estate generally because some people create corporations to buy real estate, like small groups. Like we could all get together and decide, hey, we're going to get together and buy a couple buildings or whatever. But there is a scale. We would be small time. We're talking about big companies that have millions and millions of dollars, and they're, should there be a limit to how many properties are in what market, or can they not be too close together? And who sets that? Who could set that limit?
I mean, I honestly think that the government needs to put more restrictions on big companies, like large companies, buying property for rent. Or buying single-family properties for rent, or buying single-family lots for subdivision for rentals, or buying single-family lots to build giant buildings for rentals.
But there is a shortage of rental housing. And that's the reason why they do it. It makes a lot of money.
Why is it?
Well, yeah, that's another
Sure,
thing.
and-
Are you artificially, then these
Right.
corporations are artificially taking inventory off the market. And then they're like, there's a housing shortage. Now we're
Right.
going to put a bunch of rental inventory on the market.
Exactly. I actually saw something recently about how these big corporations are like seeing how lucrative the short-term rental market is, and so that also has contributed to lesser, like
Fewer
long-term
real long-term
rental
leases.
options. But to touch on that too, why do they go to the short-term rental options?
I can tell you why. Because of the tenants' rights laws that make it impossible to get people who are neglectful, non-rent paying people out of your house.
Exactly.
And
So-
it's like unacceptable.
absolutely, and it discourages people from wanting to be longtime landlords, because then you're at
Take
the
a
detriment
huge
of
risk.
Yeah, you're taking a risk. It really comes down to your relationship with the renter. Like, is it a good renter? And sometimes even good renters, default. Sometimes they even become problematic. And if they're protected, and
there's protection, and then there's over the top.
Yeah.
Like, protection makes sense. Look, sometimes people lose their job. Like, I've
Totally.
been there.
Totally.
I've been that renter who was asked for grace from a landlord, and the landlord gave it to me, and I'm so thankful for that. So I'm not saying it should be a hard line, but if you have a persistent lack of rent payment, it should not be so impossible to get a tenant out. And especially these COVID laws in LA
Agree.
have made it really, really difficult for people. It sucks, and it's not fair, especially when you see people driving around in Range Rovers and they aren't paying your rent.
Yeah.
I'm like, seriously?
Yeah.
Did I just pay this guy's rent and utilities for the past 1 year and there's nothing I can do about it? It's not fair.
Yeah.
So a short-term rental makes way more sense. Now the government's trying to, make sure that landlords can't do short-term rentals too. It's like, God, you cannot have it both ways. By gunshot, it's like,
yeah. I mean,
you
look,
just want me to you're going to force me with your rules to do whatever it is. This is on your re-election agenda or whatever, without a real consequence. And this is the one thing I wanted to say about the corporate thing. Sellers need to start having a conscience when they sell real estate. There is an impact. You have power. You can make positive change. So if you are at least just a little bit thoughtful about the consequences of who you sell to, corporation may pay you $5,000 more, but this one's giving a family a home. Like, come on.
yeah,
Care
totally.
more.
Totally.
But it's all about money.
It doesn't have to be, though. There are options. We tell people it's okay that it's all about money, but in fact,
No, it's not
it's
okay.
not
but
okay.
It's the reality,
No,
I
but
think.
but that's the thing. If you care about your neighborhood, or if you care about your community, or if you care about ownership in general, like individual ownership, which is the most important thing in this country, I would say.
I agree.
If you care about it, then you will consider who you're selling to, not in terms of demographics
No.
at all, but in terms of like, what is this person going to do with this property? Is this a flipper? Okay. Not saying you shouldn't sell to flippers.
Right.
But,
Even
just
flippers
because-
make beautiful homes for
Yeah.
buyers to buy, and they can finance the rehab. Nothing
Totally.
wrong with that.
No, nothing wrong with it. But, but just because you're getting a cash offer, that shouldn't be the only thing that you're looking at. There should be more that you're looking at than just the quickness that you're getting that cash,
Right.
I
mean,
'Cause it's all
particularly
cash
with
at
this
the end.
iBuyer situation.
Particularly,
Right.
yes. And if you're getting it from, look, you can Google the LLC. You can Google the corporation and figure out if it's a big company or if it's a little guy.
Yeah.
And consider that.
And by the way, I've seen corporations that do big flips on a large scale and even sold some of those houses, and it's bad. It's like bad.
It's bad.
It's bad what
And
they
you
do
know what?
to
No,
the houses.
Exactly. And that's detrimental too, because when you have these big corporations who are just doing numbers instead of doing thoughtful renos where they're actually caring about what's happening and then what the person's going to have to deal with when they move in.
Right, exactly.
It becomes a detriment to the buyer and to the buyers and the community in general, because now you have someone who might have to let a house go to shit because they don't have the money to redo all these systems that they thought were done.
Retaining walls and
I mean,
sewer lines
it's
and
crazy, you know, sometimes,
underlying things that they try to hide when they do their flips, because there's no conscience
exactly, like
with a corporate flip.
Exactly. Like if you're buying a flip that's only gotten the surface level cosmetics done, and then they turn it over for a quick, you know, a quick little spread. It's enough for them, you know, not what most people would want, but because they're doing such abundance, they're okay with the smaller spreads, right? Mm-hmm. If you're dealing with that now, okay, what happens whenever that $30,000 roof needs replaced, but you don't have $30,000 to spend on that roof? Guess what? Now that roof, at some point, it's going to start leaking. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Then you have mold. Then you have mold, and then you have mold remediation that you need to do, and you have to open walls, and you have to do all this other stuff. Like, you know, what about that $15,000 of plumbing upgrades that needs to be done, or the $20,000 in electrical rewire that needs to be done?
See, this is why having a really good real estate agent when you're buying is so important. Yeah. And not just not just defaulting to thinking, oh, I'm just going to go with the listing agent because then I can get the deal. But having agents who understand renovation resale is really important, because we know what to look for when it comes to the quality of the inspection.
Yeah,
you know,
totally.
We know.
Yeah, and I just want to add one more thing, and I think that, you know, I've been seeing this, like even just looking into these iBuyers and, you know, and just kind of like articles that touch on those. There's a certain narrative that's being pushed by the side that's supporting it, that is telling people, you know, that like the housing market is inflated, you know, that it's like pushing this idea that people are like, you know what, it's better for me to rent right now, so I'm just gonna rent, you know, I'm just gonna rent this $2,400 per month house versus trying to get myself into the market. It's too expensive. I can't do it. You can do it, and there are so many ways for you to do it, with 3% down, with 10% down, 20% down. You know, there are so many different programs.
That is such a good point. It's like the headlines thing we were talking about before. If you ask yourself when you read a real estate headline, who wins if this narrative is accepted by me? Like, what are they trying to sell me right now? Are they trying to sell me the idea that I need to panic sell because there's a doomsday ahead? Because guess what? The reality is that's not what's happening on the ground here. My buyers are engaged and active and capable and willing to buy, and there is inventory and new inventory coming on all the time. So right now, we're healthy. There's no doomsday scenario, but the media is pumping it in. So who wins there? If I'm a corporate buyer, I'm going to pay a PR company to push this narrative, make the prices come down a little bit so I can get more for my money. And then we can push the interest rates are making housing so unaffordable that a buyer just can't do it. You know, so, but they can pay $5,000 a month in rent.
One of our
rent one of our beautiful new properties we just renovated. Yeah. You don't want to say fuck you, you know?
Agree. How does that benefit anyone except for the person who's collecting the rent checks?
Right. And journalists need to think about this too when they're writing these stories, about the impact of the words that they're saying. Because a lot of times, and there are exceptions to this, but I've done a ton of interviews recently with narratives about the housing market, and you know, and they have like a particular angle they're going for. And I feel like maybe they're looking for people who are just going to answer the way they want it to be answered. And I'm not going to do that. So I do think that like journalists also need to be open to the idea that in fact the national news headlines or whatever's being pumped out by whoever has enough money to create narratives, and who wins, big corporations usually, it might not be true. The people on the ground, real estate agents, not new home construction, we're the ones to be talking to about what's actually going on, because we're on the ground with our clients in the field all the time. We know what's happening.
Yep, agree. And, you know, one other thing is that, you know, just touching on this, like, who does it benefit, right? I saw another statistic that said that single family rents are up 13% since last year. So if the rents are up 13% since last year, and now you're paying that 13% increase, right? Again, who does that benefit?
It benefits.
If you were an owner, you'd be benefiting from the appreciation as opposed to more debt.
Boom. That's right. So financial equality doesn't work for big corporations that have their entire portfolio based on our inability to individually purchase. This narrative is really an important, disassembling this narrative is really an important part of realizing your actual power and significance. Like, you can use this as a wealth builder. And there's a reason why the most wealthy people in the world own real estate.
So unless there are regulations put in place of how much people
These corporations can buy,
the sellers should really check, who am I selling to?
Yeah.
That's the only person right now that can make the difference, because there is no legislation.
I think the sellers have a lot of power.
Yeah.
And I think they should not be provoked to panic sell because of the headlines. Like, you know, and we as real estate agents need to not fall for that also.
I so
you know,
agree
and
with
push
that.
that narrative, because it's just not true.
I swear, if I have one more agent come in to an open house of mine, you know, or whatever, on a phone call or whatever, just bring up these headlines that they're seeing, and like, as if they're like really believing them. I'm like, are you in the market?
Right.
Are you
and
doing
who are
business?
you working for exactly?
Yeah.
Like, what do you win? You know, it always happens in a changing market too, where supposedly changing market, where people act like entitled, like so entitled to say whatever they want to the other person they're in escrow with. Like on Highgate, my recent listing, we had multiple offers at multiple different price points. And we had, you know, like we had an agent who was a buyer who fell out, like, you know, changed their mind and, you know, twice. And so it kind of it was a little funky, right? Mm-hmm. But at every price point, the agent was saying, well, you know, the interest rates are going to cause the market to crash, and you're getting paid like your list price and your sales price are so high compared to what it would be if you put it on right now. And I'm thinking, are you out of your damn mind? Like, it hasn't changed, you know? Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, but 2 weeks of high interest rates or whatever does not a crisis make. Well, and these aren't even high.
But I feel a lot of buyers agents say that to see if they can get a better.
I think so.
That's
what I'm saying.
Use that to tell you, because maybe you don't know better, and maybe it works, and then it make
some
you
kind
not
of
believe
posturing
in your listing or product.
Yeah,
as much.
like somehow they have more
right,
leverage. You're getting a great price.
It's like, well,
you're getting a great house.
And
your buyer paid the market price.
But I've had that work for me too. When listing agents don't believe in their product, and they go like, well,
that's
the rates have gone up, and we wanted, 2 months we would have gotten that amount. Now we're like, well, it's probably going to land there. And then I got offers at, accepted at asking price, or back up at asking price.
That's true.
Where I'm like, well, this guy really didn't know any better.
So agents, stop reading the headlines. Trust your own instincts and the actual market data.
True.
Yes. Well, thank you, Nick. That is
so good.
Incredible topic.
Good.
That was great.
Yeah. Silke.
We're back.
We're back. We are back. What is your wild
my
card
wild
Wednesday?
Wild card Wednesday, pocket listings.
Pocket listings.
So let's explain what a pocket listing is.
Go ahead.
Pocket listing is when you have a listing agreement signed, and instead of inputting this listing into the MLS, you are marketed offline.
Yes.
Off the MLS.
Off the MLS.
Off the aggregator sites.
Yes, and off the MLS,
And
which
off the
is
MLS, off
really a
social
cooperation.
Media, which is supposed to be off
Database.
social media, off everything. You can only market it within your own brokerage.
Mm-hmm. Yes, under clear cooperation. That's what you're talking about.
Right.
But pocket listings in and of themselves are really just listings that are not in the MLS.
Correct.
And so why would a buyer want a listing that's not on the MLS? Why would a buyer want that?
Most buyers want pockets because they think they wouldn't compete in price.
Right. So maybe there wouldn't be multiple offers.
There would be multiple offers. What they mostly don't understand, I feel like, is that I think most pocket listings people price test sellers, and it might be a higher price than what you would actually be paying for if you get it off market, so to speak, as a pocket. Have you found that to be?
Well, it's interesting because it kind of goes
both ways.
Yes. So I have had it where a seller will say, listen, can you just test the water with this? Mm-hmm. And then you're only marketing it to so few people. You don't even really know if your price test is legit or not. Mm-hmm. So, but the buyers think that the list price is high. Mm-hmm. But when you put it on the market, you realize with 12 or 13 offers, actually, even what you thought was high was actually not that high.
Right.
So it's kind of like, are sellers leaving money on the table by pocket listing?
I think they do.
I think they do too.
Yes,
but the
I think
perception On the other side is that buyers are in a non-multiple offer environment, but you're paying a multiple offer price. Even still, it might be, either way you go, you're probably not paying the true market value on a pocket. It's either going to be way over or way under.
And they're mostly higher price homes that are pockets.
I've seen some fixer properties that are pockets. Yeah. But they sit. Because you're asking what you want for the listing as opposed to like strategically pricing it and marketing it and sharing it with thousands of people. I mean, my problem with the pocket listing policies are that they are, I think what I understand is that these clear cooperation policies were created. Clear cooperation is a policy created by NAR, National Association of Realtors, that is meant to discourage discrimination in the listing process. So it's supposed to encourage all agents to put the listings into the MLS. But what they did was they left a big, gigantic hole for bigger corporations like Zillows and Compasses to be under one broker and then market pocket listings inside their firm. So in fact, it takes it out of the ordinary buying population's visibility. And there's another side effect to that too, which I'll talk about in a minute, but I don't think it accomplishes what it is they were intending to accomplish. And in fact, it's in violation of Article 3 of the Code of Ethics. The Code of Ethics, Article 3, says realtors shall cooperate with other brokers except when cooperation is not in the client's best interest. Well, that's kind of subjective. When is it not in the client's best interest to cooperate? Maybe you have a dying parent in the house, or maybe somebody's sick with contagious something. Maybe there's a tenant.
Or maybe you're famous and you don't want your property visible.
There you go.
Which is fine.
Which is so fine. So there is a possibility where it's not in the client's best interest to go on the market. But for most people, it is.
I will say that even for like celebrity clients, right, in the MLS, there's an option to keep the address private. So you can still list it and it can still be seen by more people, but without having to put out the address, which in my opinion, celebrities and people who just need that visibility to get the highest price because that's what you need, put it in like that. Don't try to do it off market.
Yeah.
There's that.
Some people want the exclusivity. They want to be, I'm selling my house as a pocket. There's that. I don't know.
I think
it makes us
listen to the second section. The obligation to cooperate does not include the obligation to share commissions, fees, or to otherwise compensate another broker. So if in fact in our very own Code of Ethics it says that we have no obligation to put a listing in the MLS, okay, how can you create a policy where only some people have to put the listing in the MLS and some people are allowed to not put the listing in the MLS? I just don't think you can have it both ways. And in fact, I agree. It's like selling real estate with your hands tied behind your back. If you've ever tried to sell a pocket listing, you have a narrow group of agents that can see it. And then even when you're only supposed to market it inside your firm, a lot of agents send out an email blast to agents they think might have a buyer. But how is that not limiting the potential buyer pool in a way that could be perceived as
that violates clear cooperation again, because you're supposed to only market within your own brokerage, and if you go outside, boom, now all of a sudden
it's a mess.
It should be input into the MLS.
It should be input into the MLS, and that rule should apply for everyone, right? So that everyone who's buying can see it. That there is no perception of discrimination. There is no reason why a buyer agent who has a buyer who's ready, willing, and able to buy wouldn't have access to that property. And unfortunately, it seems like some companies use it as like a marketing tool. But I ask myself, who wins? Who wins in a pocket listing situation? Is it the brokerage that wins? Because I'm not sure it's the consumer that wins.
It's definitely not the seller,
no,
I think. Because I think you would get way more money for your property in this market in LA right now today. We still have less homes than buyers. I think you would still get more money.
Yeah, I don't understand why someone wouldn't want as much exposure as possible when they're trying to sell their property. Just in general, like, that's literally what creates the
demand.
The demand.
Oh my God,
that is
20
the
people
demand.
have fallen in love with it.
And you don't have to do open houses if you don't want to. You can do private showings only. There's so many things you can do that make it less open and exposed. But let people look at it. Let people know it's there. Bring it up to where it could be. Put few $1,000s and then paint it, you get $100,000 more return.
Right.
Do the things you have to do. Take the guidance that your agent will give you. And
yeah, I mean, I think there's a marketing point of view that supports this idea that there's this hidden inventory that if buyers use particular agents or agencies that they're going to have access to. But the reality is that could exist now. It exists because some companies have exploited this exception in this policy. So the law is not the rule, not the law. The rule is not applied across the board evenly. But also, you know, a lot of those listings are priced at a place where it seems higher than, you know, it should be. And then yet, if that property went on the market, you might even be, as a seller, leaving a lot of money on the table. Yeah. So it's like you don't know because you're not actually testing the market.
Yeah, totally. And, you know, I'm interested to see if you have this same experience, but I find that with a lot of like off-market properties, there seems to be less urgency with buyers than when it's actually on the market. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, because people want what everybody else wants. And I know it sounds weird because I've never done this, but I have buyers who like look at how many views a property has, how many people have favorited the home and all of that stuff. And they're like, oh, this is a hot one. This is a hot one for a reason. I want that one, you know? But just generally, I just have to ask myself, just like I'm like, who wins in this narrative? Like in the last piece, I ask myself, who wins when there's not equal access to homes that are for sale? And then who gets to be the arbiter of who gets to see what? So if your point in making this policy a reality was to prevent discrimination, in fact, you probably are contributing to more inventory being off the market than there was before the policy even existed. So I'm like, okay, we see the impact. Let's reverse that shiat. Let's like go back, you know, and let's acknowledge it's not against the law. If your seller tells you, hey, I just want to shop it around a little bit, test the market, that's not against real estate law. We should be able to pocket list if our clients ask us to, with the acknowledgement that they need to know you're probably not getting what you could get if you went on the open market. If you really want me to do this, I'm going to do this because it's not against the law. You know?
But it's not what I would advise.
But it's not what I would advise unless there's like this special circumstance. Yeah, I feel all of that.
Totally. And if someone's advising you to do that, I would question them personally.
That's
why.
Yeah.
Why don't you want to take it to
wonder
market?
sometimes.
Why?
Yeah.
Yeah. Always ask why.
Always ask why.
Always ask why. Who wins and why? Who's trying to sell me on this and why? But, you know, at the end of the day, it usually stops with the checkbook. So, like, if you can trace it, you know, you can probably figure out who wins. Okay, good one, Silke. I want to talk about where the data, and it kind of ties into this, but where what you see isn't always what you get. And so it's kind of something that's come up for me in the past couple of weeks where the MLS tax record versus the advertised square footage isn't quite accurate, which is normal. It happens all the time. So it's important for buyers to know that when they're looking at property. If you look at the advertised square footage, that could include unpermitted garage conversions, or like, you know, it could include space that's livable space that's not necessarily on tax record. But the square footage on the tax record is what an appraiser is going to look at. So it does come up. But also, as long as there's no health and safety violation, it's kind of like, you know, still a valuable addition. Like some of these 1920s Spanishes, they have the teeny tiniest garages. Like you can't even use that to park a modern car. Come on. Like your Tesla's not going to fit in there. So it's a good yoga studio or whatever. They've added insulation over the years. It's all good. But don't necessarily believe just because you see it advertised at a certain square footage that is in fact the tax record square footage. And if it's not, make sure that you actually care about that, because it might not even matter in terms of appraisal. It still is going to appraise. Now you get this bonus converted space. And as long as there's no health and safety issue, who cares? That's just my personal opinion. The other thing is about days on market. So days on market is in the MLS. It's how we determine like how quickly a property has sold. Right? So when you're pricing your house, you're a seller, you're going to call an agent in. The agent's going to pull comps, and the comps have days on market. And sometimes it'll say 47 days. So when you look at that price, you might be like, whoa, they overpriced it. It sat on the market for 47 days. Then there's going to be another one that's priced at another price. And then it's like, 7 days on market. And we add value to what those days on market numbers mean. But in fact, agents enter that information differently. All agents do. Some people don't change it from active to pending, which usually means all contingencies are removed. That thing's going to close until way late in the game, until all contingencies are removed.
Yes.
And some people change the status right away.
With an accepted offer.
So if you go from active to pending, it looks like your days on market are very short. Mm-hmm. But if your seller tells you to market the property for backup, for some reason, the days on market count continues rolling. So agents are using your comp going, it was 47 days on market. But in fact, it was 7 days on the market, got an accepted offer. They marketed for backup for another couple of days. And then, whatever. Mm-hmm. So it's like the data's not accurate in the MLS, unfortunately, because I think it really should be that when there are 2 signatures on a contract, that's your days on market count stops. Just because you're marketing for backup doesn't mean it should look like you've been on the market. I think even appraisers look at that and add value, don't you think?
Yes, of course. Yeah, it's completely deceiving.
It is.
Yeah.
So what's the thing you have to do as an agent on behalf of your buyers?
Explain all those things.
Explain it. You have to call the other agents and ask them, hey, is this days on market accurate? Like how, so that you're actually getting real information. And check the square footage on the comps that you're using because, again, the comp square footage and the tax record square footage are frequently different. Mm-hmm. Like, not all agents do this, but if I get a phone call from an agent who asks me questions like that while I'm in escrow, I always give them the courtesy of giving them the information because I feel like we have to do that extra step of digging now that we know our data is not accurate.
I do too, and I also always pick up for appraisers when they call.
Yeah.
About my property because they're appraising something else and they need guidance and they want information. And because sometimes they don't understand, like, how did that get so much?
Right.
I'm appraising something the same size for way less.
Yep.
And then I think it's just courtesy.
Yep. It is courtesy, but not everybody does that. I have literally 5 phone calls into an agent that has a listing that's in escrow, like around the corner from when I might be listing. And I'm just trying so hard, sent text messages, called. I'm like, hey, can you just give me a little bit of guidance? Even if it's just ballparky, like, so I can use it as a reference, as a professional courtesy. I will extend the same to you. And no response, which I just find so rude. But it's like, this is what we have to do because we don't have accuracy in our data. The way that it's constructed doesn't make sense. And there's no policy. I mean, supposedly you're supposed to change the status to active contingent, like immediately. But there are some agents that wait 3 days or until earnest money deposit is in or until people have removed physical before they change the status.
Some people keep it almost the entire duration of the listing.
Oh, some people keep it as active. Some people have accepted offers and host open house with the status as active. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's no accountability. Yeah. I have to call people's broker and be like, yo, we have the winning offer on this. And I'd appreciate it if you change the status. If you're going to market for backup, cool. But don't try and dupe people and get more buyer leads out of this at my client's expense.
I mean, I think it's at the expense of so many things. At the expense of buyer perception, appraiser perception, your
own reputation as an agent.
Yeah, like there are so many things that impacts, and this also like circles back to this like whole conversation about, how people read data, like if I hear news stories that talking about days on markets for properties, like what, I can't even use that as a real.
It's just like when they say, things are selling over list price. I'm like, list price is a marketing tool.
Exactly.
So if you list it low, it's going to sell over. This is not a scientific way of determining the health of a market or not.
No.
So also with the pocket listings, if there's no policy and they're selling properties off market and there's no policy of data entry into the MLS, how do we even know if we're pulling comps that are relevant or not?
Yep.
Like there's no accountability for the sales that are happening off market except in title. So it adds this additional level. Now we have to look for title. Well, I had to do that on one of my listings. I pulled comps for a resale that had data that was on title, like off-market sales that were on title, but not in the MLS. And the appraiser said he couldn't use the data. And I'm like, why can't you use these comps? And he said he couldn't use it because he can't prove that they're arm's length transactions. And I'm like, wow. Another impact, another funked up impact. So literally the house next door could have sold off market for 1.6 and my property's in escrow for 1.6. I can't use that comp.
I'll tell you what, the conversation on appraisals and the appraisal process could be an entire show in itself.
Maybe we'll do that the next time. All right, let's lighten it up for a second while we wrap up. That was exciting. God, there's so much going on. But anyway, we found some. We're going to do a test with Dominique now.
You ready?
We're going to show Dominique some photos, and she's going to tell us what this is a fun one. This is like a wacky Wednesday listing photos. Okay, bad listing photos. So you're going to tell us what's wrong with this photo.
You start.
Me start? Okay. All right. This is a listing I found. It is not in this state, but it is active on the market right now. Lead photo in the MLS. Lead photo in the MLS. What's wrong with this photo?
So many things are wrong with it. I mean, okay. One, why is it pitch black? I mean, aside from the mood lighting, which I also take issue with as a first photo. But also, why is it on tilt?
Why is it crooked like that?
Yeah, why is it crooked?
There's so many
diagonal. It's got these fluorescent
There's a
lights.
lot of wires.
This feels like a house that's floating through space. I'm a little intrigued, but
It's crashing down to earth and hasn't landed yet.
2 million.
Okay, bad photo. Okay, your turn, Silke.
Well, mine is a whole thing. This was found in Illinois, and it was listed on Friday the 13th. Can you
have
can
to
you tell
turn
me
it to
why?
the camera.
Can you tell me why?
Well, they obviously didn't spruce it up for listing. No, I'm just kidding. What is this going on right here? What is that going on?
We have
right
our own Mike Myers comes with the property. Look at that.
Every listing photo has Mike Myers in the property.
I want that bedroom.
And look at the beautiful carpet.
And the carpet looks good. It looks like a murder house. Show Neek.
Casually, just sitting at the top of a narrow
What
staircase.
an architectural photo.
Seems legit.
Washing his hands.
But do you think that's actually a good marketing strategy?
This was brilliant. They got hundreds of thousands of views on $70,000 listing.
Yeah.
Friday the 13th, Mike Myers, and look, this is the creepiest one. Do you see him?
Oh my god. I actually support this. What's going on here? I mean,
Okay.
because
So,
otherwise,
this
who's
is-
looking at this listing?
Right. that's
Nobody.
true.
Oh,
Who's looking at this listing?
Mike's sitting on it. Mike's having
That's a little too personal.
But I
stop.
remember there was like a listing, I don't know, a year ago or something where this guy was naked taking photos of himself in the property. You remember that one?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I don't know. It could work for Mike Myers in a mask on Friday the 13th.
Great.
But probably after Friday the 13th, you have to put the new listing photos back on. I don't know how long it can stay on like that.
Yes.
Is it still
I think
active?
they did. I think it's a coming soon now. They took it down.
Okay, this photo and its next photo are photo 1 and 2. So main photo and following photo.
Okay.
Okay. You know how critical it is in choosing photos. Like you have the
Like your
first
main
photo.
photo.
Oh, your main photo. And then it's like, what, then what, you know? So photo number 1.
Okay. Well, I can tell that they take care of themselves.
Seriously?
That's a good amount
Nice
of
product
conditioner and shampoo going on
Oh my
there.
God. I mean, this is the main photo.
So- oh my gosh.
And here's
okay.
photo number 2.
Oh my gosh.
Really?
Okay. Well, they use eucalyptus in their steam showers. So
Okay.
I mean, so far I'm liking the people.
They're very clean.
Do you though?
Oh my God.
I'm not liking
I
their
wonder-
agent for taking those photos and putting those as number 1 and 2 though, or even on the
At
those
all.
shouldn't even be in the listing at all.
No.
Yeah.
No.
No.
And here's another thing. I mean, most of us market our properties so that buyers can see themselves potentially moving in there, putting their own stuff there,
You
don't
can't
really
imagine
wanna
putting your
see
own stuff into the shower?
too many. There's no room for my stuff in the shower. What do you think about this situation here?
Oh.
Yeah?
Oh my gosh.
Good one?
Okay, first rule, declutter.
Oh my gosh.
They clearly did not take that first rule up. That is
I feel like there are
bad.
multiple people who are complicit in this picture existing. Like, the seller didn't move their shit out of the kitchen.
For sure.
The photographer took the photo knowing that was there. And the agent posted it.
I bet
Like,
you
this
the
is
agent was the photographer.
Oh, man. This is an iPhone photo, you
Because
think?
any photographer respectable would not take this photo.
Here's another thing. I mean, what's going on here?
Follow the money. They're
You've
just
got
here for the check.
poster on the door, like the Clorox disinfecting wipes on the
There's
counter.
a lot going on here. This actually does look like a professionally shot photo
It
in a way
kinda
with
does.
the composition. No,
Yeah.
with the composition. Like, this is clearly.
I mean, you can
This
hold
is
a
clearly
phone
a phone.
sideways and get a straight
mean,
shot if you're not completely.
That's clearly
This
an
is clearly
iPhone.
an iPhone.
Well, that's
Clearly an
Come on.
iPhone.
This is a little more intentional.
That's
but
an
come on
old.
now.
That's not an iPhone. That's like an old Motorola flip phone.
Okay. Kitchen,
Go.
another kitchen photo, same property. Do we need to know this much about what these people do in their kitchen? I mean, they've got the Brita filter, so now we know the water's bad. I don't know what the funnel's for, no clue. They use Palmolive and they're not using Method, so maybe that says something. I don't know.
So this is not in California.
This is not in California. This one's not. They do like tea. See?
See? They do too.
Anyway, it's a lot going on these counters. But
Yeah.
when I see that drying rack, I'm like, is there not enough space in the dishwasher, or
Maybe
There
maybe
is no
maybe
dishwasher.
there's no dishwasher? Okay, Nick. Next one. You ready for this one?
Let's go.
Okay. Bam. What's wrong with this photo?
I would say the photo, just in general, is what's wrong with this photo. I mean, it's like super miscolored. I'm not feeling the room at all. It's not a bad room, but it's really just the way that the photo is set up.
Do you like the lime green wall?
Well, I don't. No, I don't personally like it, but
Don't you think that somebody should have said there are a lot of people who can't see past paint?
I mean, I think that would be, I think that would be great as a white wall.
If it was as a
are we
white
talking
wall,
about
then-
the photo or what's going on?
Dude, we're
in it?
talking about all of it.
Okay,
Like, this, would
okay.
you use this photo to advertise this house?
Well, no, I would never use that photo, period.
No.
I wouldn't use that photo, period. Now,
This could be an iPhone photo too, I think.
yeah, for sure it could be. For sure.
It's a very awkward angle.
It's an awkward angle. I mean, it's got elements of like design stuff.
Yeah.
So you're like, oh, this could be cute.
Yeah.
They overdid it. Like, it's like
Yeah.
so much going on in one photo that, do you even see the like house?
This might be maximalist.
New style.
Maximalist. Yeah, it could be.
That's
I mean,
there's a
Come
trend
on.
going on with that right now.
okay. Here's my final horrible listing photo. And these are just like pedestrian style. Like, I'm just not even trying that hard to find the worst ones. I'm just like looking online, like just doing Redfin, browsing.
Oh man.
What's wrong with this photo?
Again, it's the photo for me. There's no prep going on. There's definitely, I mean, they've got blankets thrown all over
What
the
is
place,
that?
but not.
What's what? The
What is that?
the thing by the door?
Yeah.
They're covering up the peephole?
With a
I don't
with a
know.
towel? Is it a curtain?
Oh, those are windows. That's the door that has windows on the top.
Oh.
So they put a
A curtain on the windows. What is this foliage above the window?
It looks like they've put some like Christmas, what do you call it, tinsel or something
a
like
fake
on
plastic
the
garland?
tree. Garland. There you go.
What's that going on there?
what is that?
Yeah, I can't tell what's going on
I think
here.
it's like a Monopoly game. Oh no, it's a UPS package. Wonder, and then the bean bag. I mean, it's another testament to the power of either decluttering or like completely removing all the furniture altogether and starting over
Yeah,
with staging.
for sure.
I mean, what's happening over here? What's that?
Yeah, they just definitely did not take anything out of these houses to take these pictures at all.
Nothing.
For sure.
It's really half-assing it.
Okay, all right. Rapid fire round, okay?
Okay.
All right. Go.
You should make your bed.
Scoop the poop.
On that note, put your toilet lid down. For God's sake.
Clear the dishes from the sink.
Pick up your dirty laundry off the floor.
Yes.
Clean off your countertops.
Yes.
Hide anything religious or family photos, anything very personal, just put it away.
Clear out whatever you can from the bathroom, countertops, and maybe even your medicine chest if there are some things that you might not want people to know.
That's fair. And check your top drawers, because I've seen people find all kinds of goodies in those when they were touring property. All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Under All Is the Land. We will see you next time.
Under all is the land. Under all is the land. The real under all is the land. Under all is the land. The real estate. Coming to you live from ACME Real Estate in Los Angeles, California.
We should have said clear your dildos display.
I should have said that. Do you want to say that?